Hello, this is a video to go over the general use of the CAWS North Dakota version of EmpowerDB. So this video will cover all the different things this database can do. It's very likely that the way that you use the database or the things that you need to do on the system is, some of the things I'll be talking about are not relevant to you at all. So in the description of this video, there's a table of contents. So at the bottom of the YouTube video, you should see table of contents. What you can do is you can open that up, and if you feel like I'm discussing something that is completely irrelevant to what your position is, you can kind of look for the subject of what it is I'm currently discussing and then jump to the next thing that's you think would be relevant to you by clicking on the little timestamp link that comes after the table of contents item. So feel free to jump around in the video like that if you need to. All right, first thing that definitely all of you will need to know is how to start using the system. So this is a web-based database, which means all you need to do to use the database is to go to a web browser. Basically anything except this old version of Internet Explorer will work. So Chrome is preferred, recommended by us, but it can be Edge or Firefox or Safari, whatever you want. And then you just need to go to the following address, empowerdb.com/your site's site ID. And it's different for everybody, so you'll want to check in with the administrator at your site what your site ID is, but it's probably your organization's acronym or first few words of the organization's name, something like that. Once you go to that address, you will show up to this window, creating an access point. This is something that you will need to do for the very first time that you use EmpowerDB from your computer. You should only ever have to do it one time. If you're seeing this screen again and again, it means there's something kind of weird going on with the settings on your browser, typically related to the way your browser handles saving cookies. If you click on this link down here, it will tell you all the different things that this could be and how to fix it. So please read through this help article if you are getting this screen multiple times. So here's what we're going to do from this thing. You are probably not a database administrator. You are probably someone who will use this first option to create an access point. You're sending an approval request to a database administrator, and they will go on their version of EmpowerDB, see that you're making a request, and approve you. So you're going to click here. And it's just going to ask you a couple questions to form a name for your computer. Sometimes people get here and they panic. Like, oh, is it a laptop? Am I using a laptop? Is that correct? I don't know. Whatever computer you're using. If it's a laptop, it's a laptop. And then it's going to ask you what your name is. And then, oh, my name is Steven. Is that right? I don't know. It's, if you're just whatever your name is, if there's multiple Stevens in the organization, maybe you'll put your last name so that your administrator can know which one it is. And, it's not meant to be the hardest thing in the world. Next. Okay, now we're ready. Submit the request. But what's this text in bold underline? I better read that. Before clicking the button below, make sure your database administrator is signed into EmpowerDB and ready to approve your request. Your administrator will only have 60 seconds to approve the request before you will be required to try again. So you should make sure that before you click the submit button, you call your administrator on the phone, you shout down the hall, whatever it takes to make sure that they are ready to approve your request. It could be the case that your site has multiple administrators, and this is people within your organization. This does not mean CAWS North Dakota, and this does certainly not mean people at EmpowerDB support. So make sure you know who it is in your organization who can do this kind of thing for you. I think in the rest of this video, I might just say administrator as if there's only one, but again, your site could set up multiple administrators. So you would submit the request, and then you will see a countdown of 60 seconds, and you'll say, okay, I press the button. They will log into the database. They will see that you made the request. They will approve it, and then you will see a hooray, everything is successful message after that. And then you'll have a link to click on to say, okay, now time to log in. So I'm going to pause the video for a second and pretend that all that got worked out and get you to the login screen. Okay, so here we are. We are at the username and passwords section. You will want to see your administrator for what your username and what your password is. my recommendation to administrators is to, so you can't set your own password. And to be perfectly honest, the reason why is because I have found that when people are allowed to set their own passwords, 99.99% of the time, they make really bad decisions about what their password should be. So you can go tell your administrator, hey, I want this to be my password, but I would really recommend that you consider that this is going to be a database storing confidential information for survivors of abuse, and all the password rules that you know that should be followed, but you never follow them. This is the place that you want to follow those rules. I know they're hard, I know they're annoying, but it's okay if you want to make weird, your dog's name your password to your Netflix account or your Facebook account, because whatever, but this is important stuff. So please, come up with some random words that mean absolutely nothing to you, followed by a couple random numbers. I promise you can remember a couple random words and a couple random numbers. That would be a great password. And by random, I mean, yes, having absolutely nothing to do with you. All right, so that's my lecture. Here's my password that I set up for this. Okay, and we're in. And again, there's no I forgot my password email reset link. If you forget your password, you have to go to your database administrator and tell them to fix it. Let's go over some of the things that are on the home page of the database. Front and center, there's this Add Activities module, and I'll go over this first. This is putting in time or things about clients that are already in the database. And the next section, we'll talk about how to put in brand new people into the database. So what do? First, we're going to pick who we're talking about. So you can, I thought I had some fake people in here. Okay, Tina Lama, great. So we worked with Tina Lama, and it's assuming that it was today, but we can switch this and say, oh, this was actually on the 2nd. And then we can say what service we provided to them. Here it is, a list of services. Your list might be slightly different than what you're seeing here. Basically, everything in your version of the database might be slightly different than what you're seeing in this video. One of the concepts of that we do with EmpowerDB and setting up coalitions, that everybody kind of gets the same version to start off with, and they can add some things in there. Each organization can add some things, make slight changes here and there, but generally the structure is going to be the same from all of you. So don't be thrown off if you see something in here in this video that isn't exactly the same as what you're seeing in your actual version of the database. So we can say something like we did counseling for a half an hour. Let's say you did more than counseling in the session. Let's say you also did employment advocacy. So how would we record that? We would press this plus button to add a new row there. And then we can say employment advocacy or a half an hour. All right, and you can add as many of these as you would like. So you just keep going on and saying all the different things that you did. The collateral time dropdown, that's meant to be work that was done on the client's behalf. So let's say, after the client left, you made some calls to a bank or whatever, credit report, and that totaled half an hour. So you would record that like that. Next thing that we can put in is I referred them to alcohol abuse place, and I referred them to another DV shelter. So this name box is something that's an optional. You can put in any kind of information that would be helpful for you to look back in the file and have a record of what that actually was. Again, you can put as many referrals as you want. Next, we can put in, we gave them some sort of resource. So maybe you gave them a grocery gift card worth $40. or maybe you gave them some food items, and on this one, notice how some of them it's asking for the value and some of them is asking for the quantity, so maybe you gave them 5 food items. And I know sometimes it's hard to kind of get the quantity, just do your best for that kind of thing. You know, like if you give someone a bunch of bananas, is that like 6 food items or 1? You know, whatever, figure it out. Violations. These would be, so you have a particular funder report that needs to know whether certain DVPO or SARO violations happen. So you could say, okay, I met with a client today. They told me that a DVPO violation alleged happened, and this actually happened on December 24th. Okay, so you would record that information there. It's going to be really easy for you to forget to record this information here because it's like, you know, services you do all the time, referrals you do all the time, resources a lot of time, violations. You know, if it's not happening all the time, it might be easy for you to forget. You got to go put this in there, but do really need that for one of your funder reports. Next thing you can do is add in a to-do item. So you can say, oh, okay, check in about the thing, and I want to make sure I do that by Friday. That will end up showing up on your to-do list right here. And we'll show you how that works later. And now some notes. So some notes. Whatever you've been told is appropriate to put in for notes, you can put that there. Now notice I put in every single one of these things: a service, a referral, a resource, a violation, a to-do, and a note. Don't have to put in every single one of these things. You can put in any combination of these things, which means you can just put in notes or just put in a to-do, you know, whatever you want. So let's submit. Here's a little readout of everything that we just did. We can make a correction if we decided that, oh, that was a mistake. Let's get rid of that thing. And then here's our to-do list. So on the right, check in about the thing for Tina Lama. Once we're done with that, we can check that off. And the next time we come to the version of the database, that will be off of our to-do list. Down at the bottom, below this Add Activities module, we have activity totals per month. And this shows us our staff name, the number of, you know, every staff account that we have access to seeing. And currently, you know, as a standard user, you probably only have access to yourself, but administrators will see everybody here. And this is the number of hours worth of activities you put into the database each month. This is not the amount of time that you've spent using the database. You know, it's not like if I leave this window open for 3 hours, this number will go up to 4. This is meant to be, you know, if I go in and I said I did 2 hours of things with Tina, you know, maybe we did counseling for 2 hours today, this number should now, it's always a little bit weird sometimes. Yep, okay, so that goes up to 3. All right, so this is putting in activities for an individual client, but you can also do groups. And for this, we're going to select what the group name was. Right now, I'm on the test version database, and there is no group name set up, but you will see potentially all manner of group types that your organization provides, and you would select that from the list, the amount of time spent directly in the group, and maybe collateral time would be like setting up the group. And then here you would go in and list off all the different Tinas that attended your Tina group. And, you know, again, add as many people as you need to there. If your group is pretty much the same list of people as it was from a previous group, you could say copy from past entry, and it will list some past groups that you've done, and you have a button that'll say, okay, just copy the names of these people. It'll throw those names into this list, and then from there you can make some adjustments and say, okay, that Tina wasn't there, but really, let's find somebody else. Cinnamon Patty. Great fake names, everybody who tested out this database. But all of our Patties were there. All right, and then you would submit. All right, so this is putting in activities, but how do we see the activities that we've put in? on the top left of every page, there's this calendar icon. We can click there, and this takes us to a calendar view where we can see here's the stuff with Tina that we said that we did on the 2nd. Here's this counseling that we just did. We can click the pencil icon and edit any of these entries. You'll only be able to, as standard user, you'll only be able to edit your own entries. You will be able to see other people's entries, but you won't be able to edit them. So maybe it was like, oops, it was actually just 1 hour of counseling and then some notes. You do that, and here it is. Right? You can use this as a way to do data entry. So if you, oh, I know I did something on the 3rd, you click on the 3rd, the window opens up, and the date is pre-filled in, and you just fill out the rest of this. Here's go back a month, go forward a month. You can, instead of looking at a calendar view, you can switch to looking at an outline view. And then from here, we scroll through, and we can see all the things that we did. Let's say we only want to see things related to Tina. We can say filter by this client, and will show us only things done by Tina. And there's a little bit quicker way of getting to this view, and I'll show you that in a little bit later. All right, so that's adding in activities. Ooh, maybe I should tell you that you can print activities from up here. So this would print a view of everything that you see there. You can say all activities or only activities during a certain time frame. So that's handy. All right, now let's talk about adding in brand new people. I have a general feeling that there's not enough Tinas in this database. Let's add in a new one to the non-residential program. So your organization might have, different list of items here. You could just have one program, and then it wouldn't ask you which program to enroll somebody into. It would just assume they're going into that one program. So let's say we're adding in Tina Lama. Oh, the database knows there's somebody here who has a very similar name. We can click on their name. We can review their record and say, oh, yep, same birth date, same phone number. This is the same person. I just spelled their name wrong, or whoever it was before spelled the name wrong, and we can edit this. And so it could be the case that this Tina is in the residential program, but you don't have access to the residential program. So you will have to, God forbid, get on the phone to one of your coworkers who does have access to the residential program saying, hey, Tina just walked through my door. She said she's been receiving services from the residential program already. Can you go look her up and check off the button in the database so that I can edit her record? And then they will go look her up, and all they have to do is come here and check off the new button, save changes, and then you will have access to viewing Tina's record. All right, so let's not do Tina Llama. Let's do my favorite animal, actually, Tina Alpaca. What? It knew that alpacas and llamas are similar, so okay, it's still showing that this is a potential match, and we're going to ignore it. All right, street address, location, zip code, county. You should know all these things potentially. So let me just kind of show you one kind of common issue that people have. So you can type in a name here, and that lists every city in North Dakota supposedly is in here. If you're typing in a city name that is not in the list, then it's probably because it's some sort of like really small city that isn't in our database. So get in touch with your administrator or Dana or whatever at the coalition and say and get us a message to know that we should add in these cities. So we found that our city database that we downloaded like 10 years ago is not perfect, and we do need to add in some cities every once in a while. But you can also click this drop down, and you can select from one of the more popular cities that you have in the system already. So if you're seeing clients in generally the same area, it might be a lot easier to just kind of click that drop down and pick the most popular city from the most popular cities. But if you don't see it in this list, it doesn't mean it's not in there. It probably means you need to type it. Okay. Zip code, county. I don't know counties. All right, notice how this block of questions is wrapped in this gray box here called a point in time. So this is a unique thing in PowerDB. This is a situation where somebody's address could change, and we kind of want to have a record of what it used to be. So if they move from York to Bismarck, we don't want to come back here and say and do that, because then we've lost completely that they ever used to live in New York. So instead what we do is we say include additional location, and now we get a new form to come here and say, okay, now they live in Bismarck, and maybe this time I know the street address. All right, we'll encounter this same concept a couple more times later, and I'll kind of explain it again. Phone numbers. I know a phone number, mobile phone, and it is this. It is safe to call. I also know another phone number, and it is this, and it is safe to this. All right, this is not a child. This person does have 2 children, and now that we've done this, we can enter in some the information about the 2 children. So maybe one child is Regina Alpaca and another child is Lena Alpaca. All right. These will not count as actual clients in the database because we are adding this person to the non-residential program, I thought. That's what I picked. So right now, this is just kind of a record saying we know this person has 2 children. They have, and here's the children's names and birthdays and genders. It's generally good to know these things about our children, their children, but they are not clients. And I'll show you later how, like, if it is the case that they are clients receiving services, I'll show you how to note that. All right. I am not going to go over all of these questions. I think they all make sense. The one thing I just want to point out is the ones in yellow are what I call being important. So they, it'll still let you save the record with this missing, but these are all probably used in funder reports. So we really need to have that answer in there eventually. So if you're meeting it, let's say somebody calls you on the phone, you just want to get them in the database, you know you're going to have the answers to these questions later, you can leave these blank. It's fine. You don't have to come in here and say, unknown for all these things or make a guess. You can leave them blank, and then once you do know, you can come in and answer them. On the home page, and I'll show you that now. On the home page, you will see a section for data completion reminders here that will it's not showing us right now because we don't have anybody in here, but it's going to say, okay, you've not filled in 100% of the information needed for Tina Alpaca, and it will kind of always remind you to come back in here and fill in these missing spots. Let's talk about demographics. This input is a little bit different. If you know somebody's exact birth date, you can put this in, and the database will always know how old they are and say, okay, this person is 31. Let's say you do not know this person's exact birth date. We still kind of need to know their estimate age. If you have 0 clue how old they are, you can say age unknown, and then that's it. Or you can just kind of make a guess and say, they're in their early 30s. I'm just going to do that. Don't feel like you have to make this guess perfect. Every year is listed here because every funder has different brackets for how they categorize things, so we can't limit ourselves to just specific brackets. So just kind of, make a guess. It'll be totally fine. And also do know that, if we were to click Save Changes on this and then come back 2 years later, it would say 32. So the estimate will age over time. important. Sometimes if you press answer a question one way, then another question pops up. That's helpful to know. Yeah, it's all pretty simple stuff. Victim type. You can say they are not a victim, which would be pretty rare, I guess. And then that's the end of that. But you can also say primary victim. And then now we have some questions about their incident/abuse. And now we're going to say, okay, they are domestic violence, primary victimization, and then all types of victimization, domestic violence. You still, like, let's say it was only domestic violence, you still need to check off domestic violence down here. This is set up this way because you have different funders who ask it in a kind of different way, and we just really needed it to be like this. But let's say it was domestic violence and elder abuse, you would click this, and you would click both of them, but then here you have to select their primary victimization. Relationship to offender, no, answer all that stuff. Oh, lots of questions here. Again, if you have any concerns about what these questions mean or how to answer them, I'm not the authority on that. So check in with people at your organization or the coalition for answers on that. What I can tell you, though, is let's say somebody comes to you and reports domestic violence, but then later on reports to you sexual assault, a whole separate incident. What you would do is you would not come back here and change things around. This is another case where we have a point in time where we're going to say at the bottom, include additional incident. And then now we can say, okay, this time is sexual assault, adult sexual assault, maybe stalking was involved too, violation of court, or whatever it is. And then now you have these questions to answer about specific to sexual assault, legal information, the abuser, and so on. Right, next kind of section we have is income and benefits. So as of this date, we know that they have $500 a month of employment income and maybe $200 of pension. Whatever it is, you enter that in here. They get this, they don't get that, no. And maybe they have no health insurance. Okay. If their income status changes, you have to come back to their database, come back in here and say include initial income entry, and you'll see this form again, and then you have to enter in the new information. This is especially important for anybody who's part of the HUD report, because this is all information that's very much used by HUD. And the last bit of input here is we can record if they have a protection order. So you can say, okay, we got a protection order for them actually yesterday. It was a temporary DV, and the result was granted. And yes to that, and it's going to last us a week. Okay, then they come back, maybe a week later, you come back, you get the final one on that date, permanent, granted, this again, 1, 10, 20, a year later will be 2020. Oh my God. So note that when I clicked on this date thing, I don't have to click through and say, exactly what date it was through this calendar. If I know what date it is, and it's like some time way outside of the range of, like, it would take a while to click through, you can just type it in. So these little pop-ups are just to help you, but they're not mandatory. You can still just type in whatever you want. No, something's wrong. It's not going to be 2020 next year. I'll have to look into that. All right, so that's the end of your little input thing for adding in new clients, for the client intake form. But since we're adding in a new client, we're getting the opportunity to right away put in some services that we did for them. So maybe we did counseling for an hour, and I referred them to a legal place. All right, so the same kind of screen that we saw on that homepage is here. Add this new client. Here is our new Tina. Everything is here. Let's say we are back on the homepage doing other things and we want to go look up Tina again. on the top right, we just say, okay, look up Tina, this one, and we get taken to her page. And so again, like I said, if she enrolls in a new program, you can just check off that new program from here. All right, I have a list of things to talk about. Okay, next we have talking about basic children entries versus full client child entries. So like I said, these are, if I try to look up Regina Alpaca, nothing's going to come up. This is not a client in the database. But let's say maybe it is. Let's say, we actually are providing counseling to this person as either primary victim or secondary victim. So what we would do is we do not go and add in a brand new record for her. We just go here and say upgrade to client entry. Just going to want to make sure that that's actually what you want to do. It is. And now Regina Alpaca is a brand new client. We can select her from this list, and she will always be attached to her parent, Tina Alpaca. And we can go back to the parent and we can see there. Other thing I forgot to mention is when you go look up a client, what you're seeing by this lookup client box, what you're going to see right away is their basic information page. So only kind of general stuff we need to know about somebody just by looking them up. So where's all that other demographics and protection orders and all those other things? Where did that go? So that's on the non-residential intake page on the top right here. And click there, and now this is all that same information that you had before. Right? Notice up here on the top here, this is kind of what's called, the technical term is breadcrumbs. So it's like a little display of how deep we are into the database. So we are at the home page, we're looking at clients in the non-residential program, we're looking at Tina, and we're looking at Tina's non-residential intake. So at any time you can click back here and go back a level. Also from the screen you can see her activities outline. So this is that quicker view that I told you to get right to the list of everything that a client has done in the system. So this can be really helpful for you just look somebody up, click on View Activities Outline, and kind of see kind of their past history. And as long as I'm kind of in this realm here, I just want to point out that when we click on non-residential intake, we see that she has this past address and this new address. If she moves again, I can always say include additional location here, or if she has a new income entry, I can go down here and say include additional income entry. But you can also go right to the income and benefits point in time section. And so now we're just looking at all of her different income entries. You can say add in a new one. And then now we can fill in, okay, a few days later, she lost her job and now she's just got, I think that's what I had before. So yes, you do have to re-enter things that were all this, that hasn't changed because one thing has changed. Submit a new entry, and now we have a recording of January 4th. It was this, and then January 8th, it changed to that. So either way you want to make changes to this stuff is fine. Either points in time, editing through here, or going directly to there. I am super jumping around more than I thought I would, so this table of contents might get a little bit weird. But I do kind of want to show you now what happens to child entries once we enroll them into a new program. So let's put them into a non-residential program. Save changes. All right. Now, both children have been automatically upgraded to full client programs. So this is full client entries. So this is because it's assumed that your residential programs, if it's a child in the residential program, we definitely want to have those children be full clients. And so it will do that for you automatically. Do want to show you now some of the kind of specific things for residential programs. So if nothing to do with residential programs, now would be a good time to look in that table of contents. And I think the next thing I'm going to talk about is the hotline program, so you can jump around to that. Here is our residential program list. This shows us everybody who is currently in the shelter. You may see that that you have different rooms that you can assign people into if your administrator at your site has made that be a possibility. So we can, oh look, Mary Poppins is moved in on December 17th. Check there. And we can see that she has her non-residential intake and her residential adult intake. And it's really pretty similar information. The only kind of unique bit about the residential intake is that there's these move in and move outs point in time. So we would say somebody in room 2 moved in on this date. Let's say she moved out today. We have to pick her reason why. Obtain public housing. All right, where'd she go? Maybe that. Wait, public housing wouldn't be that. And they did not have a disability at time of move out. Okay, so these move in and move out entries are really key for knowing, when you run reports of who was active in the shelter during whatever time period, it's looking at these move in and move outs to see if somebody had a move in or move out that spanned the range that the report is running. Let's go back to the residential program list. I'm not going to save those changes. And you'll see that some children here are listed in black and others are in gray. Why is that? The ones in gray are the database telling you that has no record of Ben Poppins being in the shelter. So Ben is a child of Mary, but is not currently in the shelter. Now, if that's the case, then that's fine to keep them as gray. You don't have to go in and do anything. But if it's not the case, you need to click on Ben's name, go to his residential child intake, and fill in the information to get him a proper move in and move out entry. If it's pretty much the same as the parent, we can say copy from parent, and it says, okay, room 2 moved in on that date. Maybe he moved in a day later, some custody issues, whatever. We can modify that. And then now when we go back to the residential program, we see that Ben is now in black, he's in room 2, and their move-in dates were slightly different. You can click this little quick move out button, and it gives you, lets you say, obtain public housing and fill this out. There's still some of those extra questions on the move out list that aren't going to show up here, so you'll probably need to still go and look them up and fill those in. But if you just really wanted to get them out of here right away, to have that part be done, you can use this little button here. I also want to like to point out this occupancy timeline link. This kind of gives you a little cool view of which rooms people are in, and you can kind of look back and say, okay, Tina moved in and then quickly moved out, and this just can be really helpful to see this and then see it totals per day, per night, and things like that. And let's say somebody switches rooms. So Kellen was in room 2 as of September 19th. What we can do is we can say, okay, let's say today he switched rooms. Exit reason, different room within the same shelter. This is not applicable, so we'll just do that. I'm going to edit that entry, add a new entry, and now we're going to say, okay, as of this date, it's in room 1. Okay, so now when we go back to the residential program, we see that he's in room 1, and it's showing his original move-in date over there. So that's switching rooms. Last thing, just kind of specific to residential program, is you can potentially click export to document, and kind of prints this all, makes a document that could be handy to print out and keep around if your organization does that kind of thing. You can click former residents and see who used to be around, or pretend that it was December 18th, and switch the dates and see what things looked like back then. Okay, now let's talk about adding in hotline calls. So when we went up here to add a new entry, we had the option to add a client. but we can also add a hotline call. Click there, of course, if your account has permission to do such a thing. Here's some simple questions here. Again, your organization might add in some others, but we can say, okay, this was training user taking the call. It was a survivor calling. We did counseling and crisis intervention and emotional support, all the different things that you did. I referred them to a drug abuse place. Some notes. Were they seeking shelter? Yes, they were. The result was denied at capacity, and I referred them to another shelter. Add that call. All right, so this just becomes an entry. We can, that's pretty basic. It doesn't do much anything fancy like the client entries do. If we mouse over the program list, we can see our hotline calls list of entries. So here's the one we just added, hotline call 13. We can go look at that up and say, oh, I made a mistake here. This was meant to be Hokogat's that. All right, save those changes, and that's done. Again, really simple stuff. And the last bit of data entry that we can do is adding a training/presentation. So click there. Here are the questions for that. It was a training from domestic violence. It was a new group. There was educators there. 40 people. Again, your organization might add in some new questions in here that you're not seeing there, but it really behaves very similarly to that hotline thing where it's just a bunch of questions, you click submit, and now you have a list of things, list of trainings. Okay, that is really how to use this database. What am I at, 42 minutes? Amazing. Just going to talk about just a couple of extra things if you're interested in. First is, let's say you look up Tina and maybe you did the intake with her and some other staff person should really be the one that talks to her. A handy thing you can do is click this little mouse over this link icon, and it's going to make this kind of shareable link that you can send to somebody in an email. Note that it's always safe to send links to the database over email, but it's not safe to send actual client names over email, because email is a really bad way of sending confidential information. But a link to the database is fine, because just because somebody has a link doesn't mean they can see whatever that link gets you to. You still have to have the access point and the username and password and all that. So you could just right away share that link, or you could press this little email icon and you can say, I want to send this. You won't be able to send, you won't see Dana's name in the list, in your list. This is the coalition's version of the database that I'm testing on. But so you could send this to a coworker and say, can you check with them on this? You would not want to put in any confidential information into here, because this part will be sent in an email. Okay, you would send this link and they would get an email saying that with the information that's been sent. Sometimes people really like doing that. And the last thing I kind of want to tell you about is database documentation. So if you have some questions about how to do some things in the database, so there's a EmpowerDB general use section. You're like, oh, how do I send pinned links, or how do I work formatable text boxes? Probably all very boring stuff that you're not going to do, but just want to point out that that exists. You can read those help files. Reporting, though, if you are somebody who needs to run reports or generally feels like running reports, you can read this documentation stuff. And there's training videos here on how to run variable query reports, all-in-one reports, and activities reports. Those training videos are really super helpful, and just tons and tons of other things that are good for you to know. And then the report section is here. You go here, say run reports. Let's say you are having a problem in the database. Did I say my last thing was the last thing? It was the second to last thing. Let's say you're having a problem in the database. you're at Tina's record, and you're over on this page, and you press this, and nothing's happening. It doesn't create that extra thing like it's supposed to. What you're going to do is you're going to contact your administrator at your site. They're going to contact somebody at the coalition, I think Dana, and then she's going to contact me. That's quite the chain of people that your message has to be relayed to. So it would be great if you were able to give some really clear information the very first time, so that we're not having to go back and forth through that chain 100 times in order to figure out exactly what's going on for you. So here's what we need, what I mean by really clear information. First thing is, I need the link to the page that you're on. So I know I showed you that you can send a link by clicking there, but really that's the fancy way to do it. Kind of the old school and simple way is just, this is the link to the page you're on. You would go here and you would copy this. So any page in the database that you're referencing, give a link to that page. So it could be in your support request that you need to send 3 or 4 links, because you're saying, okay, I'm on here, I see this, I'm on there, I see that. Try to copy and paste wording directly from the database. So instead of saying previous housing, you would want to copy prior living situation, so that it's really clear that that's what you mean and that's the thing that you're talking about. And finally, try to be as clear as possible with the steps that you're taking when you're getting the error. So if you're saying, like, don't just say it won't work. Say, I've tried clicking on include additional location. Nothing happens. No thing comes up. Or I tried clicking on include additional locations. I get an error message. Maybe copy and paste exactly what that error message is. Really, really, really try your best to give as much information as possible for what's going on, so that we can, as the information travels up to the line, we can, solve that really quickly, and we don't have to travel back down the line to get that extra information. That's it. I hope this information was helpful to you, and that everything that you do on the database is successful. All right, thanks so much.